Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ronsley, and for the last 11 years, I've been in love with conversations. And for 4 of those, I've been totally obsessed. I believe that everything I have done has brought me to this point to have this conversation with you about having the right conversations. But before that, I want to tell you that I'm of Indian heritage. I didn't just work on my tan. When I was younger, I went up to my parents and I said to them, Mom, Dad, I want to become a creative writer. And my mom just shut her eyes in disbelief. But my dad had a different approach. He came up to me and he hugged me and he said, son, I'm so proud of you that you have the grit and the tenacity to go and pursue what you want to do and what you believe in. But I think it's pronounced engineer. So that conversation didn't happen. It actually did not happen. My parents always somehow allowed me to pursue what I wanted to do and believed in my nonsense ideas. But we have had a conversation about a conversation that didn't happen. And the conversations that don't happen in our head a lot. The ones we avoid, the ones we procrastinate. And what we do is we do this stuff where we play both sides. I'll say this, and they'll say that, and we work on these different permutations and combinations in a conversation, and when they actually happen, they never go according to plan. And the weird thing is that we don't think that kind of behavior is loony. Amongst the other things that I've noticed that are loony was about 4 years ago, I sat in this food court at about 3 o'clock when school was left, and there were these kids in these 2 fast food establishments exchanging coupons for chicken nuggets. Now, the sad part wasn't that they were getting Coke and fries with that. The sad part was that they couldn't make it to their table without panting. Now, those experiences and a bunch more got me to start a podcast about interviewing people that I looked up to about their food journey. And every single one of them had this story of what they were like when they were children and how they loved food and how food choices govern their lives today. I had this one of the most memorable experiences on my podcast was with a friend of mine. I got him on my show to interview him about the work he did with elderly people and the food that they ate. And as part of the conversation, I asked him, I said, Phil, what were your earliest and fondest memories around food? And Phil said to me, growing up, we didn't have much. We would break and cut a slice of bread that was spread with Vegemite into 12 cubes so it would last longer. I grew up in this very unsafe environment, he said, that I remember putting my sister on my back and running 5Ks to my grandparents' place. When was the last time that we gave someone the opportunity to be actually heard? We live in this world of dichotomy where there is hunger and obesity on the same planet. So there are a bunch of people dying of hunger, and there are a bunch of people dying of obesity on the same planet at the same time. We see in the news and look at our news feeds, and we see the violence that goes around everywhere, and we kind of go, this world must be a violent place. But as a whole, the planet has never been a safer place to live in. That's why we're not here. We don't have, guns in our pockets. We have this generations that cared about security and money, and every single one of them worked on making sure that they were secure, and money brought that security. And now we have a generation that cares about time and freedom more than anything else. How do we make sense of what's going on in our heads if we don't give our thoughts an audience? Do you remember when you had this thought running through your head for a while, and then you decided to say it out loud, and you saw it from an entirely different perspective? It's happened to me. I was shown a different perspective on my show by a lovely lady called Nikki Mee, who runs an organization called Free to Shine, that believes that women should be in schools rather than brothels. It's a simple statement, isn't it? I was not ready for this conversation at all. Nikki started to tell me about how the sex trafficking industry is a $41 billion a year industry. It's an industry, which means there's supply and there's demand. She started telling me about Sina, who was trafficked when she was 13 years old, and how she was kept in a cupboard in this nice hotel and brought out every time someone paid to have sex with her. Now, every fiber in my body at that stage wanted to end the conversation. It was difficult, it was hard, I didn't want to listen to it. And then Nikki says to me, thank you for giving this an audience, because people don't like talking about this stuff. People avoid these conversations. So I had to listen. I had to sit there and listen, and I was a mess on the other side. She continued to tell me about Sina, how one day a customer complained that she didn't smile while he was having sex with her. So, to teach her a lesson, they put her in this coffin for 2 days with biting ants. And in her words, in Sina's words, she said that the only thing that was stopping the ants from going into my eyes were the tears. There's another story of Shrepo, who was trafficked when she was 7. 7. God. She was stitched up 4 times so that her virginity could be sold over and over again. When do we have these conversations that are difficult? When do we get to that point? We've always approached, different conversations, and we've been told, as long as you don't talk about religion and politics, it'll be fine. We won't have a disagreement, and everyone will be happy. But those are the 2 institutions we should be challenging. We should be talking about, because they've changed our perspective of the world. They've given us this lens of how we see the world. They've made us believe that women are not equal to men, and that there's higher power in the sky governing our every move. I suppose that's probably what makes it most difficult, is to have or start a conversation around a topic that we truly believe in. Like, what is it that you truly believe in that you shouldn't shy away from a conversation? I believe that who we have conversations with allow us to see a different perspective every single time. Someone that is open-minded and has a varied perspective gives us this insight that we've never had. But more importantly, if we are open in a conversation, we'll learn every single time. What kind of conversations we have allows us to give topics an audience that no one really strives for. We've heard the saying, small minds talk about people, average minds talk about events, great minds talk about ideas. That's why this conference isn't called People Word Spreading. When we have conversations is key, because it allows us the time to be exposed to a certain idea, a certain subject. We have this notion where it takes time and patience to break down preconceived ideas that we've already had. We cannot just not believe it to be true, so we start defending it. We have to remember that persistence and patience is what we need for the progression of any idea. Where we have conversations have been the bedrock of great conversational stories. We've heard the ones that happen around a fire, the ones over a meal, the ones where you go on a long walk. The other ones we remember, they're the ones that are most stimulating of all of them. But I suppose the one that we need to worry about the most is how we have conversations. Every time we think of conversations and we think of the topic of conversations, we only think about, how can I get my point across in this conversation? I bet single one of you were thinking that through this whole presentation, is like, how do I get my point across? But the key to conversations is that you want to go in to listen. Through this journey of starting my podcast, I realized what a rubbish listener I was. I would drift off and not pay attention and come back. And I think that the podcast, by far the biggest gift it's given me was the ability to listen to my guests with curiosity on my show. It allowed me to realize how many one-sided conversations I was having. Going forward, I would love if we paid attention and put a lot of energy into understanding rather than just being understood. To listen rather than just drive home a point, and to enjoy the to and fro in a conversation rather than just get to a destination where we think this is where the conversation should end, this is where I think the stopping point is. But I suppose the most important thing that I'd love is for us to focus on giving someone a voice that doesn't have one.